Has anyone ever shown you how to make a DIY soldering iron starting from a spark plug? Watch how I do it. And in this first step, I'll secure the spark plug in a bench vise to make it easier to remove the metal core inside the ceramic body. In the next step, I'll make a DIY soldering tip from the carbon rod inside a zinc-carbon AA battery. This core is mainly graphite, which can withstand very high temperatures and remain stable under heat, so I'll use it to form the actual soldering tip that comes into contact with the solder during use. With this DIY soldering tip, I'll install it into the spark plug's core position. At that point, the spark plug will act as the holder, keeping the soldering tip firmly fixed during use. The wire I'm using for this project is a flexible single conductor wire with an insulating plastic layer on the outside, while the inside contains many small copper strands tightly twisted together to form the conductive core. Normally this type of wire comes as a pair with one positive and one negative wire, but I separated them. This red wire will connect the soldering iron to the positive terminal of the power source, while the remaining negative wire will be dealt with later. You'll see in a moment. To protect the electrical connection and keep the wire from getting in the way while soldering, I'll use electrical tape to secure the wire along the spark plug body, making everything neater and more organized. This is an alligator clip, and I'll attach it to the other end of this red wire to make it more convenient to connect to the positive terminal of the power source. But that's not all. I'm going to make another tool. It consists of a piece of green electrical wire, as I mentioned earlier, with a crocodile clip attached to each end. It's used both to connect to the negative terminal of the power source and to the object being soldered. This is a small battery, and it will provide just enough power to run this project. During assembly, the positive terminal of the power source will be connected to the DIY soldering iron through an alligator clip. Use a larger alligator clip as a handle for the DIY soldering iron to help limit direct contact with the hot section and avoid burns from heat. Next, the tool made earlier will be connected to the negative terminal of the power source. In this real-world testing step, I'll carry out 2 small and simple tests to evaluate whether this project is successful or not. Pay close attention to how it works. If it can solder small metal objects together without damaging them, then we can conclude that this project has been successful. It's hard not to question the effectiveness of this DIY soldering iron until you actually see it in action. From an old spark plug, a few wires, and a bit of assembly time, it eventually managed to solder small metal parts together without damaging them. It may not be perfect like professional tools, but for a simple homemade project, the result is genuinely worth testing. And sometimes, the most interesting part is not only the final result, but the feeling of turning things that seem useless into something useful again.